All right, it's 2 o'clock. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. It's Abortion 411, the abortion info. It's a conversation that we need to have during this pandemic. Very important conversation. Brought to you by the Right Here, Right Now platform. So the Caribbean C-RHRN. We like to stay updated, connected, relevant, and engage with each other, especially during this very important time. Everyone is at home or limited office hours. Some people are very anxious, like we don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just happy to see a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues here. Thank you for logging on. So I say this is a webinar, it's a presentation, it's also a discussion, because I started engaging with persons in the registration and in the assessment, the pre-assessment. For those of you who did it, thank you very much. For those of you who did not, well, time's up. Well, I did have a lot of discussions with you on what really you'd like us to speak about, what you'd like me to present on, and I encourage people to just drop their comments there if you have anything you want to talk about. I see Siobhan, you dropped a comment there. Anyone, just feel free to talk. Share with your network, share with your organization, your youth groups, let them all log on. I know this is such a big topic, and I refer to it as the nasty A word, the abortions, because oftentimes, especially as youth advocates, when we bring up abortions, people are completely uncomfortable. They do not want to talk about it. They think it's something, especially in our society, it's so taboo, it's so nasty. But the thing is, it's part of us. It's our bodies. It concerns our rights. It concerns our health. It concerns our healthcare. And it's something that we should discuss, especially as young people. And in this webinar, I'm going to be talking about why it's an important discussion and why we should have it now during a global pandemic. As I said, feel free to share the live feed, comment, and I'm just going to jump right into it on abortion services. Now, what really is an abortion? And this is one of the questions I asked in your pre-assessment form. What is an abortion? What's the first thing that pops in your mind when you think of an abortion? And there's just two ends to what we think about. There's the, well, it's a woman who just don't want to be pregnant and she just do something and to end her pregnancy. And the other end is, particularly we see this in conservative societies and a lot of religious persons, especially fundamentalists. It's, oh, well, abortion is, it's murder, it's wrong, it's taking the life again of a baby, of the unborn. And as I say, there's just two ends to the spectrum of what really an abortion is. But it's quite simple. In the simplest term, an abortion is a legal medical termination of a pregnancy. Legal medical termination of a pregnancy. You're stopping your pregnancy from going on. And there are certain keywords there I want us to listen to. Legal. Abortions is supposed to be, we're working for them to be legal, because it should be a legal health service. And we must look at the other term, medical termination, or medical termination of pregnancy. And in some cases, in some laws, like in Guyana, we consider it the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Medical termination meaning that this is part of medicine, it is a clinical service, and it should be treated with the highest professional standards of health care. And another word there, unwanted pregnancy. And we're going to be talking more about that and why that word is so important. Why these certain words that we use as advocates, we should be very careful of. And that is why I'm going to be repeating things like legal medical termination of pregnancy. I'm going to be referring to things as fetus, embryos, the unborn, because people are going to tell you unborn child or human. But no, medically, it's not. It's not. It's really not. So looking at it in these perspectives, especially as young advocates, I'm going to tell you always, my advice to you, one advocate to the other, is you must always be very, very comfortable, and you must be very careful with the words you use when you're speaking to people, your fellow advocates, if you're peer educators, if you're a community advocate for the persons around your community, your networks, and of course, if you're a political lobbyist, you're going to want to speak to government officials a certain way. Now, why I'm saying legal termination of pregnancy, because it's a very huge contrast to looking at particularly abortions in places that it is not legal. Why we have to emphasize a medical termination. Unfortunately, people would like to do home remedies and say that, oh, well, I've done an abortion. People like to do all sorts of methods and things that really are not abortions, but they call it so. And so we came up with the word botched abortions, which unfortunately people catch at a later stage when something terrible has happened to that woman's body. And this is particularly why abortions are important. We're going to also be discussing that later. Just to know that unwanted pregnancy is a heavy word to note, because at any time, as this tells us, an abortion is a procedure done to stop a pregnancy that was not planned. It was not planned and it's not wanted. And most abortions are done in that period where a woman discovered that she's missed a period, or she's missed her menstrual cycle, or she may be pregnant. So most abortions are done within the first 3 months of the gestational period. This goes in a lot of contrast to what people would like to think, that an abortion can happen at 6 months, 8 months. And I know even the US president, at one time he was campaigning and he was like, fully grown, 9-month baby are being aborted. That is not true. Abortions are just not that. And sometimes it gets tiring to explain to people, what an abortion is. And no, it's not when you're pulling out anything, you're not disemboweling, you're not dismembering anything. No, most abortions are actually done in the first trimester, the first 3 months, because that's when a woman will discover, okay, I'm pregnant. I don't want to be pregnant, so I'll have an abortion if I can. It's not until a woman reaches 6 months, 8 months, and then she's like, I'm going to have an abortion. That is not true. All right. So I talked to you about the language before. I wrote some notes here what I wanted to talk based on your pre-assessment forms. And something that came up with the language, particularly if people feeling uncomfortable advocating for abortion because of their personal beliefs and their religious beliefs. I would like to say that it's okay to be religious. It's completely okay to be religious. You have your faith, you live your life. What is never okay is to reject the rights of someone else. And that goes to say that abortion is considered healthcare, which is considered a human right, and healthcare, particularly women's healthcare, women's access to healthcare, is part of their human right. So when we look at healthcare, human rights, sexual reproductive health and rights, reproductive health and rights, we have to look at it as why abortions are important as healthcare. Not going to touch on that now, but if you stay tuned for the webinar, we're going to be discussing that. Now, how really is an abortion performed? This is something too that we have all these things floating in our heads about. We as advocates should know how an abortion is performed. And I've met even myself as I was, learning in my path of being a youth advocate for C-RHRN. It was like, I understood why it was important that abortions be considered a right and be protected, but I didn't really know how they were performed and what a woman would go through. So these are things that I would recommend every advocate to learn and to understand, because if you're going to be speaking on behalf of women, if you're going to speak on behalf of this right, if you're going to speak on behalf of persons who are pregnant, then you are going to want to know their experiences or why do we do this and how it's performed, especially if you're going to be rebutting persons who have these misconceptions of how an abortion is performed. I see Colin is asking there, well, is abortion legal in Guyana? It is actually, and I'm going to be talking about abortion access later in a Caribbean perspective, looking at the Caribbean laws. Now I want to share 2 videos with you on what an abortion is. So they're basically, and this came up in your assessment, they're basically 2 forms of an abortion. There's a medical termination and there's a surgical method of an abortion. So I'm just going to show you the video, and you guys can just drop me a message if you can hear it, because I didn't know if that was a thing if you were hearing the videos. But let's see. Oh my gosh, I tested this earlier and now it's not coming up, but let's see. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share my entire screen and then open the video. All right, so while I'm doing this, yeah. Everyone's seeing that, right? Oh yeah, good, okay. Okay, so I see you're not hearing the song, so I will narrate for you. Good. There are two types of abortions available, surgical and medical. In this video, we will focus on medical abortion. Medical abortion, often referred to as the abortion pill, is a safe and effective way of ending a pregnancy. The pill is usually taken within the first 12 weeks of gestation. The whole process can take up to 2 weeks to complete, although most women feel normal again after just 2 days. Depending on the method, it can be up to 98% effective. How does it work? Medical abortion can consist of two types of medication, mifepristone and misoprostol. Using a combination of both is the most effective method. Mifepristone works by blocking progesterone, a hormone necessary to maintain a pregnancy, while the other works by causing the uterus to contract and empty. The combination method requires 1 mifepristone pill followed by 4 misoprostol pills 24 to 48 hours later. The other pill is not available, but misoprostol can be taken on its own, and this method is slightly less effective. Now, I want to pause there to make a point that most persons would go to a pharmacy or go to the clinic for that pill, end up, taking things on their own in their own manner. But unfortunately, they would put multiple of these pills, they would drink it or try to insert it into their vagina to have an abortion, and they end up having some complications with it. So I would very much recommend that you seek clinical services when you're going to have an abortion and you never take things into your own hand. When taking misoprostol alone, 12 pills are taken within a 12-hour period. For every 3 hours is the recommended procedure to follow. What can you expect from a medical abortion? Misoprostol causes cramping and bleeding to empty the uterus, and it can feel like a very heavy period. It's not uncommon to pass large blood clots during the process. Side effects can include diarrhea and vomiting, tiredness, mild fevers or chills, headaches, and dizziness. To ease pain and discomfort, some of the following may help. Staying at home or in a comfortable space when taking the pills. Taking ibuprofen or any painkillers before the procedure. Having a hot bath or shower. And ensuring a friend or family member are present to help reassure and comfort you. Having an emergency plan in place for any potential complications is important, and urgent medical advice will need to be sought if you experience excess heavy bleeding, if more than 2 pads are filled per hour for 2 hours, intense pain, continuous vomiting, a fever of higher than 38 degrees Celsius that persists for longer than 12 hours. Well, what happens next? This will depend on each woman's individual experience. Most women can expect tiredness, cramping, and bleeding for a few days. Within 24 to 48 hours, most women feel fine to return to their daily routines. Although it is not essential, it is advisable to plan a follow-up appointment with a health provider 2 weeks after the procedure. They can perform if the process was successful and discuss your contraceptive options. What happens to your periods? This should return to normal 4 to 6 weeks after taking the pills. If it does not return, a pregnancy test should be taken to confirm that there are no longer signs of a pregnancy. How soon can sex be resumed? Well, as soon as you feel ready. Pregnancy can happen soon after medical abortion, so it's advisable to talk to a healthcare provider about the right contraception for you. To find out more information on the options available and your nearest visit, you can visit ippf.org. And this website here, Women on Web, is a very important website for you to access, and we are going to be talking about that later. All right. So that is the first type of abortions and the most commonly used, which are the abortion pills. So anytime someone tells you, hey, do you sell abortion pills? Do you do medical terminations of pregnancy? Well, this is what they're talking about. As you, I narrated, as you saw in the video, it's just 2 pills, mostly 2 pills, and you drink it in a series of 5. Or if only 1 pill is available, then you're going to have to drink several. But as I said, please do not take, or you do not advocate for persons to take matters into their own hands. They should seek services, just an advice from, well, any family planning clinic. I see there's some partners here. I mean, Joy, who is in Trinidad, works with Lobby Foundation. You have a very good resource person from the Caribbean Family Planning Affiliation. It's tagged in the comments there. And also anyone that any youth advocate, you just ask them, well, I would like an abortion. What should I do? Who should I speak with? We as advocates should be able to direct persons to someone they can speak with if they're interested in having abortion services. And just very important to note that it's not very scary, the pills, but we should be very supportive of anyone who decides to particularly take the surgical method. This method is a bit, intimidating for some women, but we are going to discuss it why. This is the surgical option of abortions. Remember, there are 2 types of abortions. All right. Medical evacuation. There are 2 types of abortions available, surgical and medical. And in this video, we will be focusing on the surgical abortion by vacuum aspiration, which is a recommended method of surgical abortion up to 14 weeks of pregnancy. What is vacuum aspiration? Vacuum aspiration is a minor surgical procedure where the uterus is emptied using a gentle suction. Vacuum aspiration offers women a safe, quick, and effective way to end the pregnancy. It is up to 99% effective. That's a lot. When performed by a trained health professional, mind you. Depending on availability, the procedure will be performed with either a manual vacuum or an electrical vacuum. What to expect from a surgical abortion? A vacuum aspiration involves a cannula, a thin tube being inserted through the vagina and cervix and into the uterus, where a gentle vacuum is created to empty the contents of the uterus. Some minor pain and discomfort can be expected during the procedure, and pain management should be provided. For some people, taking ibuprofen will be sufficient, while others will choose to have a local anesthetic or mild sedation, though this is not always required. The whole process should take between 5 to 10 minutes to complete. It is advisable to rest for 30 to 40 minutes after the procedure has taken place. If you have been given a local or general anesthetic, it is advisable that you have someone accompany you home and to remain with you until the anesthetic has worn off. What happens next? Well, vacuum aspiration is a minor procedure, and most people will feel fine to return to their daily routine the next day. It is normal to experience some irregular bleeding or spotting for a few weeks following the procedure. During the first weeks, avoid inserting tampons or menstrual cups, and use only pads. Cramps similar to menstrual cramps can be expected, which can last up to several hours and possible for a few days following the procedure. To ease the discomfort, you can take painkillers such as ibuprofen or use heating pads. What happens to your period? Your period should return within 4 to 6 weeks of your abortion. If 8 weeks pass and you still haven't a period, contact your local healthcare provider to make sure your abortion is complete. How soon can sex be resumed? It can be resumed as soon as you feel ready, but it is advisable to wait until the bleeding stops. Pregnancy can happen soon after an abortion, so it's advisable to talk to a health provider about the right contraception for you. To find out more information about the options available, you can visit ippf.org or womenonweb.org. All right. So that's the 2 types of abortions. 2 types came up. You might want to remember this in your assessment. So it's essentially drinking 5 pills. One option, the medical termination of pregnancy. The other would be the surgical, which is a slight suction, emptying the contents of the uterus. That's essentially it. Now, abortion and family planning. It's very important to note that abortions are not a method of family planning. They are not a method of family planning. That is, you do not want, essentially, it's the final option for when family planning has failed. If family planning failed, then an abortion is performed. You do not, essentially, for a pregnant person, if they don't want to be pregnant, if they've abstained, if they use contraceptive, if they use birth controls and those fail, but they end up becoming pregnant, then abortion would be the next option for countries where it is available. It is not a method of family planning. It is essentially a last resort. And with that being said, it's not a method of preventing pregnancies. You don't prevent a pregnancy with an abortion. It's just something that you do to terminate or end or stop your pregnancy, not prevent it. In states where abortions and family planning are legal, after the procedure, a woman is given the option of contraceptives. So after the procedure is done, it's part of the counseling. You call it pre and post-abortion counseling, which in countries like Guyana, it's mandatory by law to conduct. You discuss with the woman, well, what family planning methods would she like to have if she wants to delay her pregnancy or prevent one for as long as she wants to. So it's all part of a discussion, a family planning, counseling, or discussion. So something that we really said that we're going to talk about, I'm telling you all these things about abortions, about access, how it's performed, but I'm very much aware we as advocates should know that even in the countries we work in, abortions are illegal, and that is so sad to even consider. Now I'm going to share with you the countries of which abortions are illegal and how we can not bypass it, but how we can offer services as such, or at least refer women to such services. All right. All right. So my presentation, part of legality and access for abortion services. So something to know that some countries are better than others when it comes to the laws. And in this case, particularly, it is illegal and persecuted in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic. Particularly in the DR, abortions are illegal. It's not even legal to save a pregnant woman's life. In some countries, when we talk about legality, that they would, oh wait, can you guys see my screen? Can you see the presentation? Let me see. Oh, all right. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So abortion 411, webinar, legality and access. Just to know that in Haiti, as mentioned, and in the Dominican Republic, abortions are not only illegal, but you can be persecuted for them. As in, if someone finds out you have done an abortion, a woman has done an abortion, a person who's pregnant, or the doctor or clinician who did it, they can be arrested by law. Something to note too, that in the Dominican Republic, it's up to 2 to 4 years imprisonment and up to 20 years imprisonment for a doctor who has done it. In the Dominican Republic, abortions are not even legal to save the pregnant woman's life. So any health complications she may have, she will have to go through the pregnancy. So countries in the Caribbean where it's illegal and risky for abortions. When I say illegal and risky, I mean that it is illegal, but there's some clinics and some private clinics that will offer abortion services on some terms. However, if someone is to report it, then it may create a firestorm. So most persons try to avoid having this as a public discussion, like in Curacao, where our advocates have to change their methodologies and their strategies of having abortion advocacy. In Jamaica, particularly, they're now having a whole campaign, a whole movement with their National Assembly to decriminalize abortion services. We have some platform members on the call. I don't know if they want to talk about in the messages anything about that. In Trinidad and Tobago, there are some clinics that would refer you to someone who would do it. Particularly with Women on Web, which we're going to discuss earlier, that they would be able to support abortion services. But just know that in these countries, it's only as a life-saving procedure, which is mostly at the late stage of pregnancy. Then you have to look at illegal, but they don't really care. And an example of that would be in Suriname. So abortions are illegal in Suriname, but private clinics can offer the abortion services, and the government really does not restrict or jump in. But that does not mean that we should not advocate for the legality of abortion services in Suriname, because at any moment now, if they have a change of government who is conservative, they can simply decide, well, we are going to fight down this, we're going to fight this down. The law is the law. No, we should always advocate to change laws so that women can be protected and so that healthcare professionals can be protected. Not because nothing's happening now means nothing's going to happen 20 years later or even 5 years later. And a perfect example of that would be in the United States, where whatever administration is in power can basically change terms, can change the law, can change access about abortions. Right now, under the Republican president of Donald Trump, we have something called the global gag rule, which threatens all of us as advocates for sexual and reproductive health and rights. Because the gag rule is more than just you can't speak about abortions. It's that we will restrict funding to you. If your organization supports it or publicly supports it or even does it, we're restricting funding to you. You're not going to get it. And in some countries, not some countries too, last year for the Commission on Population Development and the Commission on Status of Women held at the United Nations, the United States was blocking advocates and activists from entering the United States to go to UN meetings because of their strong stance for abortions. So this global gag rule really threatens all of us when it comes to abortion access, services, legality. And flexible, it's somewhat legal. And there's a reason I say somewhat legal because of the terms and the amounts of freedom that you would have for abortion services. Now, in Barbados, which is actually the first country in the Anglo-Caribbean to change their laws concerning abortions, it's on justifications or limits. Similarly with Belize, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. Now, St. Lucia and St. Vincent recently, as in within last 10 years, had changed their laws to be more progressive. But when I say it's flexible or somewhat legal, a woman cannot request an abortion if she does not want to be pregnant. In these countries, a woman must satisfy one of 4 justifications to obtain an abortion. That is, it threatens her health or her life if she was impregnated due to rape or if she was impregnated due to incest. Other than that, then she cannot have an abortion done. Fully legal. And there's a reason why you say fully legal. I talked to you about the somewhat legal, not the fully legal. Fully legal because a woman can request an abortion and it will be given to her, even if it's under a term. In such countries such as Cuba, Guyana since 1995, and in Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States. Now, why I highlighted Guyana there is because Guyana is considered to have some of the most progressive legislation when it comes to terminating pregnancies, not only in the Caribbean, but the entire world. fully legal, on some limitations, on some terms, and I'm going to discuss it to you because advocates like to call these, anytime I express it to them, they call it the perfect laws or the perfect set of laws. Now, abortions in Guyana is governed by the Medical Terminations of Pregnancy Act of 1995. Fun fact, this year is 25 years since abortions have been fully legal and recognized in Guyana. It's legal, it's safe, affordable, and confidential. It is actually offered in public healthcare, some public healthcare systems and at private clinics. You do not need to have permission from your husband, your partner, or a parent or guardian. Abortions in Guyana, you do not, there's no age restriction. No matter your age, if you're pregnant, you will get an abortion. Consent is only asked of you, the person who is going for the abortion. Now, some people like to debate that it's an 11-year-old girl and she's pregnant. Should she get her parents' consent? Should the doctors even get parental consent? Now, the law was written in such a way to protect the dignity and rights of that person who's pregnant, knowing that circumstances being 11-year-old or under the age of consent, which is 16 in Guyana, that you're not comfortable talking to your parent, you risk being harassed, even violated, going through violence from your parents, and you also risk, unfortunately, through incest and you being raped. You don't want to involve a lot of people in that discussion and conversation. So the law sort of considers that, and that's why abortions do not have an age restriction in Guyana. It must be done by certified doctors or medical personnel. So you must be trained to do an abortion, and also your clinic must be certified to do abortion services. When done properly, a trained medical personnel, abortions are safe. They are one of the safest medical procedures done in the world. In Guyana, there has been 0 recorded cases of botched abortions by trained medical practitioners in certified clinics. So looking at these perfect laws about the limitations, and why I say these, that, why I'm showing you this is that if you're advocating, you're going to want to at least zero in and know what you are advocating for. So when some, for example, politicians who are very much ignorant of what an abortion is, thinking that it's done at very late stages, etc., you can tell them, no, what you're advocating for is that any person who's pregnant should have an abortion if they do not want to be pregnant. In Guyana, you have up to 8 weeks to make that decision. No reasons need to be given. It can be done in any setting by a trained medical doctor. When we say any setting, because abortions are by pills, most abortions are by pills, you just need to go to your doctor. They can administer you a prescription for those pills, and you can go home and take the abortion pills as prescribed. Once the doctor is trained, mind you, from 8 weeks to 12 weeks of pregnancy, an abortion can be done in Guyana, what you're advocating for, by a trained medical officer for the reasons as follows. If the pregnant person has been raped, if it was pregnancy due to incest, the woman is HIV positive, but you see, this law was written in 1995 when the HIV pandemic was still rattling societies. However, now you can be pregnant and not pass the HIV virus on to your child. So this particular one here, HIV positive status, it's still in law, but doctors can advise you that, okay, it's up to you if you want to go through your pregnancy or not. Take in mind, using this, because this is an example of what you would need to advocate for when you're advocating for abortion reform and laws. If it endangers the life and health, if the woman is unable to care for her infant, or if the pregnancy is a result of failed contraceptive, you can have an abortion done up to 12 weeks. Between 12 to 16 weeks, you can have an abortion for those terms. However, 2 doctors need to give the go-ahead. So they need to assess you, have a discussion with you. Somehow, of course, they're going to have proof that, you were either raped, incest, HIV positive, it endangers your life and health, you're mentally unstable, and you're pregnant due to failed contraceptives. Then up to 16 weeks, you can have an abortion. After 16 weeks of pregnancy, 3 doctors need to agree that, well, any of those terms has happened, and they would give the green light for you to have an abortion. After this time, of course, no, sorry. So after, particularly this point, it can only be done to save the life of the pregnant woman. It has to be necessary to save her life. Now, Caribbean laws, I just look at you of what we describe as the perfect laws, given that abortions are fully legal in Guyana. But I want to now give you a general sense of Caribbean laws. As I was reviewing this, I want you to know that most of these laws, particularly in the Dominican Republic and in the Eastern Caribbean states, they were written in the 1920s. They were written hundreds of years ago. These laws are outdated. They're irrelevant to us now. They're irrelevant because of our modern practices. They're irrelevant because of women's rights in the movement. They're irrelevant because of how advanced we are with our medicine. They're colonial, and as we can know, as newly independent states, we're trying to break away from a colonial system. These colonial laws were very repressive on a woman's right over her own body, something as simple as the dress code to we can tell you what to do with your body and what not to do with your body. So they're very repressive laws. You know, the sentences are very oppressive. I did mention that in the Dominican Republic and in other countries in the Caribbean, you can be in prison for up to 4 to 5 years if you went to a doctor for an abortion to be performed. As for that doctor, him or herself, they face up to 20 years imprisonment and their license being terminated if they've offered abortion services. So that's 20 years in jail. They can no longer practice when they're out. And as for a woman, she suffers up to 5 years in prison just because she wanted to have an abortion. Now, these terms are oppressive. These laws are oppressive. What they do is that they subject women to discrimination and harassment in society. Because you've made something, you're still keeping it taboo, you're still rejecting it, you're still making women feel wrong and nasty and guilty. So your community judges a woman for having an abortion. Women are made to pay high costs to travel to countries where abortion services are performed. And this put them at an expense that they could simply save by going to a doctor. And unfortunately, women who can't afford to travel anywhere, for women who feel shunned by their communities, they will end up going to a bottom house clinic, or what we like to call bush doctors, to have botched abortions. I don't even like to call them abortions because they're really not. To have services done where they risk infertility, they risk sepsis, health complications, and death. You know, as advocates, that is what we are trying to prevent. We are trying to prevent the death of women for something as simple as a health care service. Why should women be at a disadvantage just for laws that do not want them to express their rights over their own bodies? If we fail as advocates to educate and empower women and our entire community of their rights and their choices, if we fail to defend these rights, if we fail to protect their rights, then that would be the end goal. That would be the output of our failure. And I want us to look at that, particularly in countries like Guyana, really zone in on something that I find particularly sad. Yes, you can say abortions are legal in Guyana, full terms, but abortion access is still a major issue. Abortion access is still a major problem because you have countries like Guyana where you had to fight for abortions to be available in public health care. And I want us to look at this case where a teenager died after a botched abortion was done in a private clinic. Now, an 18-year-old girl is dead after being subjected to a botched abortion conducted by a private clinic. She was already a mother of two, and she's 18 years old. So what happened? She went into a bottom house abortion to someone who was not certified to have it done. What that person ended up doing to her was perforating her uterus and damaging her bowels. That is to say that the person did not perform any of the two abortion services that I have shown you, which is the medical and the surgical form. That person basically put something into her vagina, a sharp object, and punctured her organs. She was 4 months pregnant and she was continuously asking to have an abortion done. She already had 2 children. And one of those children is 4 months old. So look at that. And now we're going to be discussing why women have abortions and why we should defend a woman's right to have an abortion. Because This woman, this 18-year-old, already is a mother of two. She's pregnant, and she already had a 4-month-year-old baby. Now that is very dangerous for a woman and can really degrade her health. She was begging to have an abortion done. And she ended up going to someone who was not certified to do that. She begged, she asked her husband to have an abortion done. The husband did not want to give her money, but he eventually gave her some money. He left to work. She went to say she had an abortion. He was upset at her. She started to vomit, and then she was at the hospital. But unfortunately, at this point, she could not be saved. This is her. These are real women with real stories and real experiences. Death of Bartik, a woman, doctor fingered in botched abortions. This was in 2015. Now, this is the death of a 23-year-old woman who had an abortion done on her illegally by a clinic that was not licensed by the Ministry of Health. This is a woman who went into the hospital to undergo surgery to repair a perforated uterus. Again, we're having a case of a country where abortions are legal, but there's no abortion access, there's no education, there's no upholding of those rights, there's no upholding of those services. Women are not knowledgeable of those rights, even in a country where abortions are legal. So this very young woman, 23 years old, had to get an abortion done, went to a clinic for someone who was not certified, and again had her uterus perforated, basically choked, bored, stabbed from the inside, because we are not giving women the education and empowerment to have these services done. And we do not know the experiences of why. I show you the first experience of a very young woman, 18 years old, already pregnant, already had a 4-month-year-old, wanting abortion done. Now, this woman here is a mother of 3 months. She was pregnant for 3 months. She wanted the pregnancy terminated. And here's the thing. The doctor just explained that she was slightly paralyzed. That was it. Whatever he did, he paralyzed her. And you can imagine the pain these women go through. The pain. This is her. And we must look at these women to realize that we are advocating so that women do not go through what they had to go through. It is very sad to think that we are denying, we meaning society, are denying women these rights to save their lives. To my brothers and sisters in Suriname, a Surinamese woman dies in the doctor's operating theater. And this is something I talk about, but some women having to travel to countries for abortion services. Now, this woman traveled all the way from Paramaribo to have an abortion service done in Guyana, where it is legal. She's already a mother of 4 children. She is a mother of 4 children. One age 2, one age 3, the other 5, and the other at 7. She is 22 years old, has 4 children, and wants an abortion because why? She does not want to be pregnant. And we need to respect that. Some women do not want to be pregnant. Some women want to delay their pregnancy. Some women are not ready to be pregnant. And we must respect those rights. Now, she died in a clinic that was not registered. And here's what happened. So it was someone who had an abortion 5 months ago from Suriname, traveled all the way from Suriname, who had an abortion in Guyana 5 months ago, took her to the abortion clinic. The doctor then came out and told her that she had the abortion done, but the girl was not catching herself, meaning she was not recovering. She did not recover. She died there on the table. This is her. These are real women with real stories, with real experiences. And it is our job as youth advocates to defend their rights, to protect their rights, to fight for the rights of women, to fight for the rights of all those who are pregnant, to have an abortion if they request to do so for any reason that they would have, as long as it fits into, as I described, the perfect laws, as in You gave a woman the amount of time where she could have an abortion, and then there are limitations where it could be due to rape, it could be due to incest, it could be due to her health status, including mental health. And this is one of the cases of how people can think home remedies can help, how people can think taking actions into their own hands because their communities have rejected to help them, because their communities have made them feel wrong, because their communities have made them feel that an abortion is the most terrible thing. Women take it upon themselves to do it. A woman injects her abdomen with gramazone. For those of you who do not know, gramazone is a pesticide. It's a toxic insecticide used in farms to kill insects. Now, this woman died at the Georgetown Hospital after she injected herself with gramazone. What she did is she put the poison into a syringe and stabbed her stomach with the needle and injected herself with poison in order to abort her fetus. By the time she reached the doctor, she was vomiting profusely. They could not save her. She died of poisoning herself. Her relatives were not aware that she was pregnant. This was only discovered and told to her relatives after a doctor examined her when she died. Now imagine that you are pregnant, but you do not want to tell your family that you are pregnant. So you take matters in your own hands. My fellow advocates, we need to be the ones to educate people. We need to be the ones to tell you that you need to have these conversations. You need to really not let women feel bad to have these services. We shouldn't. And I always get emotional when talking about this. Our job is just that. We defend sexual and reproductive health. We, as advocates, defend sexual and reproductive health. No matter what, that is our job. Even if it's a part-time job, even if it's voluntary basis, we must defend and protect. Some women cannot go through pregnancies. Their bodies are just weak. They cannot go through a pregnancy. Some women think they're too young to go through a pregnancy. Some women were raped and would like to go through a pregnancy. Some women went through incest and they got pregnant. They had incestual sexual relations. They end up pregnant and they don't want to go through pregnancy. And for many career women, for many women in tertiary education, for many women, you remember 16 is the age of consent where you're just out of high school and you had sex, you're pregnant, but you don't want to remain pregnant. Then in that case, some women have abortions. Our job is to not judge why a woman have an abortion. Our job is to direct her for abortion resources. Now moving on to our laws and everything to discuss. I'm so sorry, that I had to go into a whole emotional part there. That we need, again, if we fail to educate and empower women of their rights, to defend their rights, if we fail to defend their rights and fail to protect their rights, death will be the end of our failure. Caribbean access. As I mentioned, you've seen these women. Some women did unsafe abortions, bottom house clinics, as in the Caribbean, we like to say the bush doctor, something. I'm not going to call these unsafe abortions, bottom house abortions, or bush doctor abortions. These are not abortion services. Again, there are only two safe and legal types of abortions. Medical, where tablets are used, and surgical, where gentle suction from a machine or a cannula is used. And of course, home remedies, we saw again, some women like to take pills and insert it into their vagina. They bleed out. Some women, of the clothes hanger abortion. Some women take a clothes hanger, straighten it out, push it into their uterus, just sting it around a pole. That is not an abortion method. Some women like to put Coca-Cola up into the vagina. Some women like to put things up there. Some women like to cuff themselves in their stomachs. Some women like to throw themselves down the stairs for abortion. Those are not abortion services. These home remedies, they're not safe. You risk death. So our job is to have women know that it's okay if you want to terminate your pregnancy. It's okay. We're not here to judge you, but please, let's talk to a medical professional. So one of the good things you can do is Caribbean access. Now, as you saw from the case, a woman traveled all the way to Ghana. Unfortunately, she did not go to a trained medical professional. She did not go to a licensed clinic. But abortion services are offered in Guyana. Some people in the Caribbean travel to Guyana. Some women, particularly from Jamaica, travel to the United States and Canada. There's also for access, particularly in time of this pandemic, women on web. So I'm going to tell you more about women on web. We are in a global pandemic where some persons do not, you can't leave their home. Some persons are trapped with their abusers. Some persons are being raped and they're trapped in their homes with their rapist. There's some women who are, they're being forced upon for incestual relations, particularly young women. Now, if they want an abortion, they should have an abortion. It's their right. There are other women who, you're just bored at home, you're stressed out, you want to have sex. You have sex. But the right or to consent to have sex doesn't mean you consent to be pregnant. So some women would want to terminate their pregnancy, and they should be allowed to terminate their pregnancy because they didn't want to be pregnant. Remember, an abortion is to terminate an unwanted pregnancy. Okay? So womenonweb.org. That is my advice to you. Particularly, it came in the pre-assessment. Some persons are asking, well, abortions are illegal in my country, or unfortunately, abortions are not offered at my clinic because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, some people do not want to leave their house. Some people are very much afraid to go out into hospitals because of the health concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic. A very strong resource would be womenonweb.org. womenonweb.org. Now, let me just go through this website with you. Now, type in womenonweb.org and you're going to see this. I need an abortion. I had an abortion done. Now, you just click on I needed an abortion and they're going to give, basically tell you how they can manage your abortion safely. They tell you about the drugs which we saw in the video, mifepristone and misoprostol, right? So they're going to tell you that, you have less than 10 weeks if you do not suffer any severe illness. If you have problem accessing safe abortions, they're going to tell you about consultations, and you can even donate. And I'm going to tell you why donation is important later. When you read this and you're okay with what they're telling you, you click start. Now, if you've read their terms and you agree to them, you click yes. After you click yes, you have 37 questions to go through. And these 37 questions will basically be like your counseling of how they can help you, what they will prescribe to you. So you go to like, yes, you're pregnant. We go through things that the reasons of an ultrasound. Now I'm going to advise you that you will need to have an ultrasound done, and they may ask you for proof of that ultrasound. This is why I was telling you to some clinics you can go to, for example, in Trinidad, you can go to Family Planning Association of Trinidad and Tobago, which can do the ultrasound service, and they will be able to give you one and even a prescription. Well, not for the abortion, but for any healthcare services that you may need to manage your abortion. That is to say, you get your ultrasound done at these associated clinics, you send it to Women on Web. Women on Web would then write a prescription, send it to an organization or a country where abortions are legal, like Guyana. We're going to collect your prescription and mail you the drugs. Mail the women the drugs. And of course, you can always go back to the Family Planning Association for post-abortion care, just to make sure everything is healthy, that you're okay. Right? Just to know that this service is absolutely free. Women on Web, it's free for you to go through this counseling and for pills to be sent to you. All right. Oh, what did I click there? Yeah. That's the legality and access, why it's important during COVID-19 pandemic that we should go through. I see there's a lot of questions there, so now I'm going to take the time to really go through and answer your questions. I'm sorry, did any of you see the website that when I went through Women on Web? Did any of you see that? You could just answer me quickly. Okay. I didn't get a response just yet. So I'm just going to start answering your questions here. Particularly, I'm going to go to the first person, Siobhan. Now, Siobhan, I had a discussion with a lady, and she said that having too many surgical abortions in a short period of time can cause serious damage to your vagina. What's the time span a woman should take before getting another surgical procedure done? I really don't know much about the surgical abortion, so honestly, talking about that would be great. So yes, I did go through the surgical method with you. And you see, this is all up to the woman's body, and this is all up to what's recommended by her doctor, because they're trained to do this. Because she doesn't even have to have a lot of surgical abortions done. She could simply have the medical termination of pregnancy done, which is just a pill. So while she had one surgical method, the other abortion methods could be the medical termination of pregnancy, if she did find that soon, you know. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So I hope that answered your question there about how often you can have. Just go to a doctor and talk about it. Okay. Shantae is asking here, what about dilation and evacuation? I believe that's another form of surgical abortion that can be done after 4 weeks. Well, the dilation and the evacuation, now, as I said, there are two legal, safe types of abortion, which is the medical abortion, which essentially is dilation and evacuation. So what the Termi pills do, you call them the Termi pills. It's that when you drink it, it stops the hormonal process of pregnancy, and it eventually dilates the uterus and causes the uterus to start it dilates the cervix, causes the uterus to start cramping up. So you basically have like a heavy period. Yeah. So I hope I answered that question. What form of abortion would mostly recommend? Well, the mostly recommended form of abortion is the medical termination of pregnancy. So it's the pills, essentially. Because, as I said, it's basically pills. It's safe. You can take it from home. And once you found out that you are pregnant in the very earliest term of your pregnancy, well, that's very easy. And no problem there. In Guyana, no questions asked. You don't need to give a reason why, as long as you're under 8 weeks. So going through, I did answer, yes, abortion is legal in Guyana. Hello. All right. So, yeah, Shania. Yes, Guyana is a very good, it's a perfect example of what type of laws we would like to see in our own countries where abortions are not legal. And yeah. Pat is saying that these are horrible atrocities against women and girls. Yeah. And it's very important that we talk about these stories, because these cases, these women, it could have been prevented. It could have been prevented if only they had known about abortion services, abortion rights, and abortion access. And it is our job as advocates to ensure that they always know, and to hold governments to change, to reform those laws, and then keep them accountable to those laws. And they are acts of desperation. They are. And particularly, as I mentioned in Guyana, the laws can be perfect, but you need to have access and healthcare. So we need increased access, particularly in rural and hinterland communities in Guyana, and even rural communities in the Caribbean islands and in countries like Suriname and Belize, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, not only making the abortions legal, but making them accessible to women. Joey's saying that the fun fact in Suriname is that a safe abortion is very expensive because it's not in the insurance package. So again, fortunately in Guyana, abortion is public health care, which means that if a Surinamese was to fly to Guyana, anyone from the Caribbean, anyone from the world is to come to Guyana and go to any of our public health care clinics that offer abortion services, it will be done free of charge, because in Guyana it's considered a public health care. All right. It's said that a woman should prevent multiple abortions. That is true. So remember, abortions are not a family planning method. It's not. It's the last resort for when family planning has failed. You use family planning methods instead, and in abortion post-abortion counseling, after an abortion is done, the doctor or the nurse would ask you which method of contraceptive would you like, and they would recommend a long-term method. For example, the intrauterine device, the copper T IUD, or a popular method is the implant. So women should always ask about what family planning methods they can use after an abortion is done to prevent having another abortion. Seek it out to Family Planning Association. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so that basically brings us to the end of this webinar. I know 45 minutes, but we went to an hour. I hope I've covered everything that everyone asked of me. I've covered everything I wanted to talk about. I just want everyone to know that it really is a woman's right, everyone. We've went through all those stories, and particularly for those of us who are religious, if it goes against our religion, that's fine. You yourself don't have to have an abortion done, but you shouldn't deny a woman her right to access education, resource, or even services about an abortion. You can simply say, hi, I personally would like to recommend that you go to the Guyana Responsible Parenthood Association, to go to the Lobi Foundation in Suriname, to go to Aspire Guyana, which is an organization for youth SRHR, to go to just log on Caribbean Family Planning Affiliation on Facebook, send them a question, go to Family Planning Association of Trinidad. You ask your advocates, you ask your local advocates about abortion services. Even if it's against your religion, you should direct persons into the resources. I also told you of womenonweb.org is a very good website for you to access abortion services. Just log on. They're going to mail you prescriptions. They're going to contact you. If you can afford it after the pandemic, travel, but always make sure that family planning and contraceptive methods, find out more about those. But even if you need an abortion, just know that it's your right. And as advocates, we should protect and defend those rights. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar from the Caribbean Right Here, Right Now platform. Thank you very much. Something to note. Just stay safe out there. Everyone, please mask up, gloves up, wash your hands, stay safe. Mental health, make sure that you put your mental health first. Do things that make you happy. Watch your favorite shows. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead. Stay safe.